Hi, my name is Dion Rebello, and this is the Bullion Vault. Hi, Willem, how you doing?
Well, and yourself, Dion.
Very good. So, episode 37, and it's been quite an interesting week with regards to precious metals. If we look at where gold was last week, it was around $3,660 an ounce, and this week it smashed 3,700 and currently sitting around 3,060, 3,760. So where we've been talking on and on about where gold's going. I mean, I know a lot of analysts from the likes of JP Morgan, and the like have all been saying, 3,800 probably by the end of this year. Some said it would probably be pulled right back to about 3.5, but gold is not showing any sign of slowing down.
No, I mean, the first time it crossed 3,500, that we saw that as shattering the glass ceiling. And then it found support near 3,300 round about there. Then it went up again, went past 3,500, went past 3,600, and we thought, okay, well, now the new support is 3,500. And well, we were underestimating it once again. It went up 3,700. It came within sniffing distance of 3,800. I think it was $3,788 to an ounce, and it hasn't dropped significantly since then. As you said, it's currently actually at $3,755. Um, it's changing quite rapidly at the moment as we speak, going up a few dollars here and there, but it seems to have found a new support above 3,700, and that is quite quite shocking, to be frank. We're talking about 3,800, and it's there. We've just about touched it.
And let's contextualize this. That's $200 to $4,000.
That's true. I mean, and who of us were even talking about $4,000 an ounce at the beginning of the year? We were talking 3,200. We revised it up to 3,500. Then it was 3,700, and now 4,000 is starting to look a lot more likely.
Well, what's interesting is I actually got a message a little bit earlier today, from a client, one of our very enthusiastic and big supporters of what we do, and they had invested a considerable amount in gold, silver, and platinum. And maybe it would be nice to do that as a case study to show like what those originally, when they were bought, the pricing and so on. Of course, it would be all remain anonymous, but I think the exercise of where the value is, because literally what they've done now is they were saying in on the 2nd of September, their full portfolio was valued at about 12 million rand. It's currently on the 26th of September sitting at 13 million. So it's made a 1 million rand in 1 month.
And I mean, yeah, because it's not just gold. Yeah. Silver is over $45,000 an ounce. And I mean, when last did we see this? I think it was 13 years ago, odd years ago, that we saw silver at these levels. And it also doesn't seem to be slowing down. I mean, this morning when I checked up on it, I think it was $45.05, and right now it's $45.36. So, that's still a considerable percentage that it's gone up just today.
Well, again, and I was going to go into silver also, but again, you see the pricing there, and we smashed that new point. And instead of it, of the old performance of silver, what we've known for many years, silver would hit these new peaks and then have a quite a massive drop. It's been probably a 12 to about 15% drop in actual value. And then, of course, slowly build back up over a prolonged period of time, or say probably up to 3 to 5, maybe 6 months, and get closer to those levels. Here we're seeing it smash and then just go slow, slightly down, a little bit of profit taking, but it's remaining at the high levels. You know, and I think we need to also do a review of, going into the final quarter of this year. Is we'll probably do a review in the next couple of weeks or so, in the next few episodes, on where we looked at pricing at the beginning of the year. I think we did say that and I'd love to see the old episodes where we did speak about silver, because I know that we were talking into the mid 40s. I mean, I think that was realistic.
I was a little bit more conservative on it. I think I was saying low 40s. So I've already been proven wrong on that one.
Yeah, I think I was more bullish on it, if I remember, and again, it's gone against every expectation. I mean, we look at platinum also. I mean, platinum has had a phenomenal year. I mean, from the first 6 months of this year, it was the best performing metal, hands down. I mean, gold's run over the last 3 odd months has been probably very significant, and I think it might be a balancing out, and that's something we would also need to look at. But currently it went up over $100 over the last week, where it's sitting at around 1,540 odd dollars an ounce.
It's actually $1,561 an ounce right now.
Well, then it's gone up since we
It's
even
it
spoke, and I'm
platinum.
talking literally. I would have done these figures, what, 15, 20 minutes ago?
Yeah, it's quite crazy. I mean, as I said, yeah, it's $1,561 an ounce for platinum, $45 43 actually for silver. It's really going up, and it's interesting to see that the industrial metals are really doing this well as well. And I mean, gold, we already know it's safe haven asset, etc., etc. We've beaten
Yeah.
this horse over and over. We know what gold is, but still, to be sitting at $3,760 right now is pretty insane.
Yeah, and again, I see and I always like to look at it in relation to the rand dollar, because of course that's a currency we live in. And I mean, that has remained quite stable over this last week. I mean, a week ago it was around 17.35, it's 17.14 now. So all the performance has been purely on the growth of the metals, not the devaluation of the currencies. But we know that comes. We know there's cycles there. We know the dollar's very weak. It's under a lot of pressure right now. The rand inadvertently will then be stronger, not based on our local economy, because we know that our economy is very sluggish right now. Growth is down. There's a need for mass stimulation, but again, it's a political thing, and I don't really want to go into that today. But what I'm highlighting here is the rand looks strong. It's got nothing to do with the performance of our economy, but more to do with the weakness of the dollar.
Yeah, interesting that you would say that, because every time I open Kitco to go and have a look at where things are sitting, and because I operate in rands most of the time on the website, it's set to rand, so it opens up and I see this. Oh, yesterday it was 64,000. Today it's 65,000, and I think to myself, but what's the rand sitting at? Okay, no, that's pretty much what it was yesterday. So yeah, you're right. It's not that the rand is causing a lot of this rampant runaway effect that the metals are seeing. It's actually just the value of the metals are really going up.
And again, I mean, I know that we've spoken, and I've had a lot of clients and some that have invested considerable amounts. Now they're saying to themselves, "Oof, I should have maybe looked at putting more." Again, this is going to be the next question: is have we hit the ceiling? Have we gone into that point where it's not going to grow further? I mean, personally, based on the current growth, I don't think we've come even near. I mean, if you look at the projections to the end of this decade, which we're coming up to halfway point now, or we've surpassed halfway point, it's realistic that to say that 5 to 6 to 8 thousand dollars an ounce by the end of the decade is not unrealistic based on this current growth.
Definitely not. And it's quite interesting that you're saying, we've got the clients said, oh, I should have just put a little bit more, because that was the exact same conversation I was having with my wife this morning. We were actually sitting there saying, you remember when silver was $12 an ounce? Maybe we
Yeah.
should have bought more.
See, unfortunately for me, and this has always been the problem, is a lot of my money is tied up in building businesses, but I wish I had reserves to have actually committed it to the metal. So I look with a lot of envy of clients that we've convinced and we've said to them, this is the way to go, because ultimately we've been proven to be right. And we've said and we spoke about silver at length. And what's quite interesting is I was at a dinner. I'll tell you exactly when it was. It was my brother's birthday. So that was on around the 25th of April this year. And I had the opportunity to sit with one of his mates who he's been friends with for 30 plus years. Very wealthy guy. And of course, he knows I'm in precious metals. And I spoke about silver, and he's like, yeah, yeah, I know he's heard the story about silver and its growth. I'd love to have that conversation with him now, because we spoke in silver up, and there's many years where people said, come on guys, you've said this and you said it's coming, and now what? And we always maintained that silver just needed that patience. It will come. And it goes back to the old story of that video of the Hershey bar and the old silver tarnished bar, and what it has better value. And yet that old silver bar was thrown in a cupboard, and that was what, 2015, hey?
It was around about there,
Yeah.
yeah.
And we then reviewed the video around 2021. So even then, that wasn't the big growth of silver, but then silver still showed considerable growth through that period of time.
It's yeah, it's the price of instant gratification, you know. You
Yes.
don't see the use for that silver right now, and if you just took a few years to just let it sit, don't want anything right now, but I'm preparing for the future, and that's basically what we're trying to tell people. Bullion is all about. It's preparing for the future.
And again, this also leads me to where we've had a lot of clients that buy, and within six months of buying, they're selling because they need the money, all this or that. And I've always like said, please understand that gold bullion, or bullion in general, is about a long play. You've got to have that commitment for at least 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. The clients that chose to stay in that are the ones that are reaping it. And the clients that chose to sell at points where they made a little bit of money are probably kicking themselves now for not staying in it.
Well, this is the thing. They need to remember that we're not selling at spot price. We're selling above spot price because we're a business. We need to make money. There's a minting process. There's, fees that we need to cover as a company. It's as simple as that. We need to make a profit on what we sell. So they're not buying at spot price.
But any physical coin is never sold at spot. So
Yeah,
there always is a premium on the physical.
definitely. There is a premium on it, and that's only half the story. Is when we buy, chances are we're not going to offer spot price either. And no dealer will offer you spot or above spot because what's the point? You're never going to make that money back. You know, we are a business. They are businesses, and that's the way it operates. So you need a considerable bit more to cover those costs before you can actually say you're making a profit. But if you wait long enough, you're going to get it and then some, versus just sort of covering it.
Well, what's interesting is that that client I'd mentioned, and I know he listens to our podcast a lot. So, but what's interesting is, and he of course he does his own spreadsheets, and he's always keeping up to date. So, from year to date, he's made 3 million rand in this period of time. So, from the beginning of January until now, he has made an extra 3 million rand on his portfolio.
That is quite insane.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
And again, this is kind of what we talk about is, and we go on about it at length, is that we know that this is the time where precious metals are here to shine, literally. That we are going into that phase, and we go back to the Minsky, Kindleberger and Minsky model, where we've gone into that phase, and we're going into that next phase where we're seeing it already, where the prices are ramping up, and they're ramping up in a parabolic motion where it's going more vertical. I mean, to have $100 gain in the space of a week is insane.
It is, and I mean, I think this is sort of a special moment that we are experiencing right now, a special moment in history, in fact. You know, we've been talking about central banks buying gold. We've been talking about how countries are increasing their stock of gold. They're increasing the percentage that gold plays in their financial portfolios. Countries are doing this, central banks, large institutions. And when the big money like that starts stockpiling gold, starts buying gold back, starts repatriating gold, you know something is up.
And you say that, but even the likes of Ray Dalio and his company, and the even Warren Buffett's, and all of those big funds, hedge funds, and so on, their commitment to precious metals, be it gold and silver and so on, that is all taken also, and it's become more popular. And again, we go back to the Minsky model. This is where it's now going into that phase of mass awareness within the general population space. And this is where those investors who had listened earlier had bought, and they're now reaping the rewards of those gains. Is it too late? I don't believe it is. I believe you're going to buy it, and you're going to have a lot of nerves to maintain, because I do think there's going to be some corrections coming, and I do believe there will be some pullbacks, but I think those will be momentary, and I'll see I do believe we'll see it actually then extend further.
But I mean, it's like any investment activity, whether you're buying stocks, bonds, government bonds, gold, silver, whatever you're buying. It's every investment activity carries risk with it. And that is why you diversify your portfolio. If this one does badly, you can either just get rid of it and invest in something else, or if that one does well, you can sell for a profit or hold on, however you want to do it. But the point is, diversification is probably the biggest, how can I put it, the best advice we can give you is diversification. And right now, precious metals, gold particularly, is the thing to be investing in.
And as I went back to, and we spoke about it in the last episode with Ray Dalio, I mean, he mentioned that allocate 10 to 15% of your portfolio. That kind of advice from your mainstream investment companies 5 years ago, 10 years ago, would have been unheard of, because it was never, gold was seen as an outlandish thing, very unpredictable. How the world has changed. It's now a tier one asset, as far as Basel three, and it's only improving its standing even within that category. And now you got the likes of the big in hedge funds around the world, your central banks, your all of those coming together, and they backing gold, because there is a problem. There's a problem with inflation. There's a problem with economies, with GDP to debt ratios, where something has to give. And there's a lot of uncertainty that we're about to go through. And I think, and I know more importantly, that gold and precious metals is going to be that safe haven where people that have invested into it will see portions of their wealth being maintained and actually grow through these periods. We've spoken, remember the whole thing on Argentina, and how the peso devalued to the dollar, and over a very short period of time of 3 to 5 years, if we look at it from January of 2020, where they had their sovereign default, I think it was the June of 2020. And since then, the peso has just lost massive value to the dollar. And we did that whole case study where if you'd held gold, I think originally on and was 59 pesos to the dollar in that January of 2020. I think it would have given you, if you had bought 1 million pesos worth of gold, I think it was 20 odd ounces of gold you would have got. And right now, 1 million pesos won't even get you, I think, half an ounce of gold.
Yeah, I haven't done much, or I haven't done a recent update on that study, but it'll be interesting to find out. But it strikes me as interesting. You were saying just now that if we go back 10, 15 years, then it was this outlandish thing to invest in precious metals, this outlier. If we go back a little bit further than that, gold and silver was actually physical money. You know,
Yes.
the actual money you had in your wallet, you had in your hand that you bought your bread with, was gold and silver.
Okay, so let's get straight into it. I mean, we've actually waffled on for quite a considerable period of time, but I think there's a level of excitement. I think there's also a level that what we've been going on about is actually coming to the fore, and I think that's important. That what we've said, and we kind of are getting it right. But more importantly, and I always remember this from Mike Maloney, and he got the quote from Winston Churchill, that if you want to understand the future, you need to understand the past in order to. And I don't know the exact phrase, and I'll probably look for it, but in order to understand that future, you got to understand the past, and it reflects what the future will be.
Yeah, and it's interesting that that actually takes us back to the Roman Empire, and this was the one thing we wanted to chat to about today. And if we go back to the Roman Empire, to the shiny denarius, it was literally a silver coin and was almost nine or was over 90% pure silver, 4.5 grams, and that was actually their currency. So you had the Grand Roman Republic, as we know, it was the greatest the empire at the time, and then one day it was no more. So what happened?
Okay, so I think this is quite, and again, how I've even teed this up with that Winston Churchill quote is it's important because we're going into a similar period of time. And I think what we're going to discuss now is quite interesting, is how this one of at the time was the biggest empire that literally stretched, I think it was from Egypt all the way through to the United Kingdom, and controlled a vast portion of the world.
And it's quite interesting. Now, yes, we'll get into the financial side of it relatively shortly, but if we look at some of the key factors that sort of contributed to the collapse of the Roman Empire. First was barbarian invasion, so it was constant attacks by the Germanic and the Visigoth, Huns, all of those. So they had to sort of bolster their army, keep feeding the army, keeping up the war machine, and that costs a lot of money. So that was one of the first factors. The second one was internal conflict, weak leadership. Then
Well, the old story there. I mean, an emperor was sometimes the poison chalice, because if you weren't ousted by the people, you were ousted by the people around you, literally your parliament, all murdered.
tout brute,
Yeah,
what more can we say?
Brutus and
Yeah.
Julius Caesar.
And then, of course, this all led to economic problems. So they had a faltering economy, there was massive, massive taxation, inflation, and eventually it became a decline in commercial and agricultural get it agricultural output. So yeah, and then of course the economy falters. So then the next problem was the size of the Roman Empire. And back in those days, you couldn't just hit up the old button and speak to somebody on the other end of the world. It was massive in size. There was poor communication. It led to sort of governments forming within the empire amongst themselves, little pockets forming, and this eventually led to the rise of the Eastern Empire. And that's another problem. Keep that one in mind because it all builds to the same thing.
Yes.
And then, of course, the last thing is diseases and climate factors. Events such as volcanic eruptions that disturbed the climate. We had crop failures because of that drought, weakening the population, etc., etc. And doesn't all of this sound weirdly familiar to you right now?
Well, that's it. I mean, I was just looking at another stat where you mentioned the Denarius, which it had 4.5 grams of pure silver, and then a couple of centuries later, it literally had only 5% silver in it. So there was a complete debasement of the currencies, a devaluing of the currency. So what a denarius actually really was worth suddenly became worth less, and hence there's inflation.
So yeah, let's just quickly run through those two terms because it's not quite the same thing that happens there. Debasement is when you lower the intrinsic value of a currency, of the actual coin itself. As you said, it went from almost 90% pure silver to 5%.
Yeah.
So that is debasement. The actual intrinsic value of that coin is being reduced. While devaluation, it's literally a reduction in the buying power of that currency. So
Yeah.
it's a little bit, it's very much the same
Very similar,
result.
but different. Yes.
It's similar, but it's different. Yes.
And again, I think the important thing there is that the empire was under a lot of strain, as you mentioned, these things, and we look at where we are now. You look at the current empire would be the United States of America, which is the reserve currency internationally. I think it is different because, of course, communications far more tighter. I mean, we can communicate with someone on the other side of the world. Things are moving at literally as we're speaking. We can see pricing increasing and decreasing, but still, you have global events like climate change, and be it if you believe it or don't, there are things that happen. You have seasonal droughts, you have seasonal things like the big fires that happen in LA or in Australia and so on around the world. These events have effects upon food supply, all those kind of things. I mean, I remember one of the big things after the whole COVID thing was the supply of certain produce because the people didn't have the access to diesel. And people forgot that a lot of mechanized equipment used in farming requires diesel. And again, that would affect the supply of food goods. And of course, that in turn causes food goods to then increase in price.
Yeah, and that, of course, is why we have inflation. It's as simple as that. If the farmer is paying 5 cents more per liter to put diesel in his tractor, that same 5 cents is going to apply to get it from his silos to the production facility, from the production facility to the shops, etc., etc., etc. And that 5 little cents in the price of diesel going up ends up costing us a whole lot more.
Yeah. And again, I think if we look at modern currencies, and we've seen it in within Southern Africa. Zimbabwe went into hyperinflation, and we've spoken many times about the billion Zim dollar notes
The
that
100 trillion Zim
yes,
dollar note.
yes.
Yes.
I've got a couple of those times over, and yet, that happened within that time also, that there was this massive uh, hyperinflation of actual current the actual value of the currencies was lost.
Yeah, I mean, now we are 100% speaking of currency devaluation, and as you mentioned, Argentina before, we've seen a massive drop in the value of their currency, and the big problem there is that you can still hold on to that 1 rand, that $1, that 1 peso, whatever the case might be. It's just not going to be worth anything. You need more of them, which means more needs to be produced, more needs to be printed. The more is printed, the less they are worth. And that's how you get caught in that hyperinflation loop. So, yeah, I think we spoke about it last week, where what was the number? 80% of all dollars ever printed was printed since 2020.
20% of all the dollars was produced in 2020. 20% of the dollars ever made were produced in 1 year.
Thank you. So yeah, but that's what I was driving to is, the dollar at the moment can take it, or up until now could take it, printing themselves out of trouble. We need dollars, we make more, but it's only going to work up until a point, and with the massive debt that the United States has. And I just want to make something clear. It's not that we hate the United States or anything. It's that they are the world leaders, economic leaders. It's as simple as that. The global reserve currency. So whatever is going on there touches us all directly.
Absolutely. And what's interesting, I mean, I was thinking about it, is like with that story of the Roman denarius, which was so much silver in, and then got reduced, but it was still the same coin. But you look even in our modern times. I mean, in my lifetime, there was half a cent, and you could go to the shop, and with half a cent, you could buy four chappies and something else. I mean, I was very young at the time, but I remember that.
I think I might have just missed the half a cent. I remember the cent very clearly, but I must have just missed the half a cent. They were around the house, they were there, but I don't think they were being produced or in circulation really anymore.
But you look then. I mean, we had you had a 2 rand note, a 5 rand note, and a 10 rand note. Of course, a 5 rand's a coin now. A 2 rand's a coin. A 1 rand. You don't even have coins under 10 cents anymore.
Technically, what they say is you're supposed to have a coin, or your largest denomination of coin should be able to buy a loaf of bread.
Really.
So technically, we should have a 20 Rand coin right now.
Yes, yeah. So again, but what we're really touching on here is that loss in actual purchasing power, but also that's the inflation we're speaking about. So yeah, let's get back onto the Roman story.
So yeah, I mean, we were talking about it was 90% silver, and then due to currency debasement, it eventually ended up being 5% silver. But now, people aren't dumb. They know the silver content of those coins are less and less and less, and they also know those coins are now worth less. So instead of giving me 1 denarius for a loaf of bread, I now want 10 denarii for a loaf of bread, and that leads to inflation, and that's exactly what happened. We saw inflation rising, and eventually, it just gets out of hand. The people working in the army said, "But hang on, the money I'm earning doesn't justify my service anymore. I want more money. Everybody gets more money, more gets made, lesser silver in them, and it's a runaway effect." And that's exactly what we saw happen in Zimbabwe. And this is the difference between, fiat currencies and actual gold, or actual physical gold, silver, etc., etc. An ounce of gold is an ounce of gold, regardless of where you are, regardless of what your money is worth. You're still going to get the value for that ounce of gold. And if that's sitting at $3,760 an ounce, I'm going to go to Europe and I'm going to get the euro equivalent. I'm going to go to London. I'm going to get the British pound equivalent. I'm going to come to South Africa. I'm going to get the rand equivalent for that ounce of gold. And that's the difference. Your physical gold, your physical holding of bullion does not get debased or um, devalued as your normal fiat currencies do.
Yeah, so essentially what you're saying is it's geo neutral. So as you say, anywhere in the world, you will get the same value of it based in that currency, even though it's expressed in dollars, rands, or pounds. And the interesting thing there is that this is what we've been speaking about all along. Is that it is the store of wealth. We can go through since 1971, and the growth of gold over the last 5 decades has been consistent, and it's been consistently moving upward.
Yeah, and I mean we looked at the Roman Empire now, and no, I'm not saying that was the be all and end all of its collapse, and that was directly what caused it, but it was a great sort of fuel to the fire.
Yeah.
Nero fiddling in the flames, although the violin hadn't been invented yet. You know that stories.
Yes.
So yeah, there's a lot of myths surrounding it, but there are some things that we can pick out that is actually true. And it's quite simple that one of the things that contributed at least was this devaluation, debasement of the actual currency.
Yeah, so just going on to the next part of today's podcast and episode, you know, we've spoken about gold coins, and of course, South Africa is probably was the first country that where we started to talk about sovereign coins in the sense that they were now considered to be forms of actual currency, but in the form of gold, and that was the Krugerrand.
Yes, and the Krugerrand is actually, it played a big part in bringing gold to the average person, to the masses. I mean, it was in 1967 the first Krugerrand was minted, and what was very, very unique about it was that it had no denomination on it. So instead of the denomination, if you look at your golden eagle or your Canadian maple leaf, it says $50 on it. It's an ounce of gold, but it says $50 on it. While the Krugerrand had no such denomination on it, the Krugerrand was one fine ounce of gold.
You know, it's interesting that you mention it like that. Is I've never actually thought about that. Is that the Krugerrand is based on the value of the gold. It's not expressing an actual term, a number, other than it's an ounce of gold. And if you look at what an ounce of gold has cost, been valued through the last 5 decades, I think in the 70s it was around $30 an ounce. To the mid 90s, or around, I think then it was about 400 odd dollars an ounce. And now you look into where we are now, and it's sitting at over $3,700 an ounce. It's been, and again, it's been that story of wealth. But the Krugerrand itself has some very interesting, attributes to it.
Yeah, well, as we said, firstly, it was the first sovereign coin produced by a government. I mean, it was produced by Rand Refinery in collaboration, or in what do you call it, along with the South African Mint. It is South African currency.
And let's be clear about this, is you can take a Krugerrand and by law, you could go and buy a car with it. It is VAT zero rated, so in other words, you do not pay any value-added tax to it, but it is currency, and that needs to be the clear part and
You are
understanding.
100% correct. Yes, technically by law, you should be able to walk into a store like a Pick and pay for your groceries with a Krugerrand. It is legal tender.
Well, if you're going to spend 65,000 rands worth of groceries,
Well, you can take a quarter ounce, which,
or a 10,
is about a trolley worth of groceries these days.
yes.
So yeah, as you stated, and another interesting thing about the Krugerrand is that it is 22 karat gold. So it's infused with copper to make it more durable, which was basically what they were doing with a lot of the sovereign coins in the pre-World War One era. Was they added and infused it with copper, made this what do you call it, alloy of gold and copper, 22 karat gold, and therefore that is why it has that distinctive rosy tint to it.
But we need to be 100% clear here. It still has an ounce of gold within it.
Correct, correct. And because of that, it weighs 1.09 troy ounces. It's 33.9 grams. Now, 1 troy ounce is 31.10,
Yeah.
what have you, ounces, grams. So, yes, it still has, if you were to melt it down, extract the gold from the copper, split the two, you'd get 1 troy ounce of gold, 24 karat gold.
And what's interesting, I mean, by 1980, the 90% of all coins sold were Krugerrands. So there was a massive trend here where I think then the rest of the world started to to see, listen, there's value here. The man in the street started to see value in buying coins that they could hold, they could put in their safe, and then suddenly, as their currencies were starting to lose value, these coins actually started to hold good real value.
Yeah, and I mean, it worked. In 1984, um, there was the sale of Krugerrands just to the United States was $600 million. Now, if we look at that today, that's $1.85 billion of Krugerrands going to the United States each year. And then, of course, economic sanctions against South Africa was implemented due to the apartheid regime, and it sort of stemmed that flow of Krugerrands going out to these countries. However, there were no sanctions placed on actual gold
Of course not.
because it was deemed a crucial import.
Well, and where have we heard this is with Donald Trump and his tariffs. Suddenly, gold is no longer part of the tariff restrictions.
And during those days, the world heavily relied on South Africa's gold production, and so as a result, South African economy just sort of shrugged it off.
And grew, and we were able to build infrastructure and cope and survive in an isolated world. Yet we did.
Yeah, and I think that just demonstrates the power of bullion, what you're able to achieve if you actually have physical gold and in great amounts. And so, yeah, we continue the story. If we now look at it, 2017, over 53 million troy ounces of Krugerrands have been sold since the launch. And I mean, it's obviously it counts for 60 million coins, which is on all the different sizes, etc., etc. We've got the half ounce, the quarter, the tenth, etc. And because of the success, obviously there's imposters popping up. So it gave rise to the Canadian gold leaf, the Australian nugget, Chinese gold panda, the American gold eagle, and of course the British Britannia coin. So, and all of that came from the Krugerrand, which, stands for Paul Kruger, or Paul Kruger, if you want to say it, and then the Rand, which is a Kruger Rand.
Yeah. And what's interesting is to date, 60 million ounces have or Krugerrands have been sold. If I do the math on that, it equates to $225 trillion worth of gold has been purchased.
Well, I haven't done the math, but that is quite significant. I mean, yeah, it's quite crazy to think about it. And the worst thing, or the thing that really spins your mind is, as a South African, I'm not allowed to leave with more than 30,000 rands of Kruger rands.
And again, I mean, that speaks to, of course, it being firstly that it is a sovereign coin. It is considered to be actual money, so it pertains to the laws of the country in protection of our currency. But as you say, and it's very clear, I mean, 30,000 Rand of Krugerrands is not one Krugerrand.
It's not even a half at this
Yes.
at this stage.
But again, this is where as a foreigner you come into the country, you can buy many Krugerrands and there's no issue.
Yeah, you can grab 15 of them. They're gifts for my friends, and there I go.
Yes. And then if you look at a South African, I do know of South Africans that have chosen to leave South Africa and emigrate to other countries. And I do know that you can get a SARS clearance on certain values of it. But also, I've had clients where they'd invested Krugerrands to then, I mean, this is a couple of years ago, to over 200,000, 2 million rands worth of Krugerrands. I mean, in today's terms, and that's 3 years ago, you're probably looking at about probably four to maybe 5 million rands worth of Krugerrands. And the cost to actually have them moved across to the country they went to was too much. That to the extent that they actually just cashed out.
I think that's what a lot of people are doing, is they simply selling them, cashing out, because SARS gets to get their cut then. So I suppose that's a big reason of why they do it. And yeah, and instead just cashing it out and taking the actual money over, instead of trying to take those Krugerrands out. Because I mean, yes, you're allowed to leave with I think it is 1 million rands worth of personal goods and effects per year. So Krugerrands obviously don't fall into that. However, if you've got a gold medallion, like what we actually sell, then that falls into that category, and that actually you can count up to 1 million rand per annum.
Yeah, I was just about you beat me to it, but that's exactly what I was going to say is yes, the Krugerrand is zero rated with regards to VAT. So there's an advantage of not that having that 15% evaluated tax on it. However, there are limitations. If you keep it within the country, no problem. If you choose to remain here, which most of us do want to stay, I mean, there isn't that consideration leaving here. However, if you do want to diversify, make sure that you got your wealth in certain countries and so on, I mean, then it would make sense that you should be able to make it movable. And this is where medallions come into to their own is yes, there you got to pay VAT on them, but they are then classified as a personal use item, which falls into the same category as jewelry. And that gives you that advantage that you can take an ounce, a kilogram medallion of gold, and you can put it in a nice box, and you can walk through the airport, and you're not breaking any law by taking that and leaving the country with it.
Well, I don't know if a kilogram falls under 1 million anymore. So
No, it
I
would be
think we
two
need to.
million.
I
It would
think
be
we
two
need to
million. Yeah.
reevaluate that one. But yes, basically what you're saying is, I think the thing we're trying to say is, before you travel with, or what we should be saying is, before you travel with any gold, anything like this, make sure that you know the laws of the country you're in, where you bought it, the laws of the country you're going to. It's as simple as that. Don't try and be a hero. Don't try and be a sneak thief. Just follow the laws.
Yeah, again, and the important thing is what you're raising here is this is not about cheating the system and what is due for taxes must be paid and so on. Always declare, and again, I know of people that have traveled with Krugerrands in vast amounts, and they've been able to take them. Is that legal? No, it's illegal. And if they were caught, they would be arrested. So we are not advocating that one bit. The important thing is, there are tax advisory companies which we deal with also, that could assist you on, when you do want to do these kind of things, you get a SARS clearance, and there's ways of doing it. What we're really trying to highlight here is that Krugerrands, yes, they are special and they are beautiful, and they are dated. So you can have one for special moments, special years that has a value to you. But ultimately, we still do believe that medallions are far better as far as a gold product in the greater scheme of things than a sovereign coin would be.
Yeah, I mean, if you really look at it, it's a sovereign coin. It is property of the government. You holding it means that you own the value which it represents, which in this case would be one fine ounce of gold, one fine troy fine ounce of gold, and that's what that coin is worth. But it's still the government's property. It's still like the 1 or the 5 or the 10 rand note you've got in your wallet.
Yeah.
Except if it had a number on it, it would be 65,000 rand. So yeah, and that's the thing about the Krugerrand, is it is government property. It is a sovereign coin, and that it shall always remain. While if you actually buy a medallion, it is a 1 ounce of gold. It is yours. You own it.
In closing, Willem, any final thoughts?
Um, no, I think we've touched on some interesting things today. I think the only thing I still want to mention on that is the so-called proof Krugerrands.
Oh, yes, yes,
Because
a bugbear of mine.
indeed, and that's why I thought I'd quickly throw it in here. We've got the proof Krugerrands. Now, basically, what that means is, instead of being struck once, it's struck twice. That is literally the only difference. It's still 22 karat gold. It's still one fine ounce of gold contained in that 22 karat blank. It's the same blank, except it's struck twice. So now it looks a lot better. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And if you want to buy one because you think it's beautiful and you want to look at it and appreciate it for what it is, then go for it. But you're paying a premium for it, which is, in my opinion, a little unjustified.
And to contextualize that, I mean, I've told the story a couple of times where I'd met a client down in George, and he was so proud of his half-ounce Krugerrands, the proof sets, and he wanted to show me them, and I said to him, so what did you pay for them? And what was interesting is he paid the value of an ounce of gold for a half-ounce Krugerrand.
And that's,
Proof, fancy shiny little coin.
yeah, and that is unfortunately how they catch you, because most people won't know. They're getting told this is, investment, collector's value, this, that, and the next. But at the end of the day, if you want to get rid of that, or if you need to get rid of that Krugerrand, if you need the money, you can't wait for a collector to come and take it off your hands. You can't wait for a collector to bring you your price plus 20% or whatever price they add onto it. You need to get rid of it, and the guy who's buying it from you is going to say, "Oh, 1 ounce gold, it's that much. Here you go."
Yeah. And again, that's that old story where I mentioned the tarnished silver bar is, again, it's not the appearance that matters, it's the content that matters. And anyone or any company that's selling you something that's saying it's got this or got that, barring the importance to you, and we've had this conversation before where you would be very happy to go and pay a premium on a coin that is Star Wars coin, for lack of a better example. But that means something important to you. It's like for me, I'm happy to have a Krugerrand that is the data where my children were born, because that is a value that I'm putting on that coin.
And it's a lot, as with a lot of things. If you can find somebody who's willing to buy it from you at that price, then fair enough, that's its value. But if you're just looking for an investment, you have to consider just the base value of that metal.
In closing, Willem,
If you enjoyed the episode, hit the like button, and if you want to see more, be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you all in the next one.
thank you. Goodbye.